life of sanctuary, my moral imagination and passionate generativity rises above and subverts the intent of those who would deny me sanctuary. Given the limited resources that black folks have to work with, I mean, think about it. Obama became president after what was the country in a mess. They said, give it to the black guy. That's all I could think of when he won. The limitations we've had to work with, given the odds, given the constant debasing of our very souls, look what we have done. Our moral imagination is evident everywhere you look. In jazz, in literature, in art, in philosophy, in religion, in science, in engineering, and politics. You remember Hidden Figures? We didn't know about her till they made a movie. You name it, and you will find some quiet, unassuming black person who made a way out of no way. Despite the obstacles, we have and do and continue to excel. Black Lives Matter despite sanctuary. We have learned to take jargon, and those of us of a certain age will know this book from the 60s. We've taken jargon like the book, The Negro Problem, into the new Black Joy, the new Black Girl Magic movement. Look it up if you haven't read about it. Enjoy with me that joy. Despite sanctuary, we know who we are. Despite sanctuary, we love ourselves. Think about this. If black people are at the bottom of everything in terms of life indicators and disparities, then black women are going to be at the very bottom in every statistic. Yet, who has the lowest suicide rate in this country? Black women. Those with the highest suicide rates are those with the most sanctuary, white men. Despite living in a society that never has ever really honored my blackness as sacred enough to hold me in complete and unconditional humanness, my worldview is shaped by, informed by, and guided by the generativity of our unparalleled story. We are a product of all kinds of things. There was no such thing as an African American. I am a people created and invented by navigation, Spanish greed, the King James Bible, and the disorganized thinking about humanity that I call racism, as disorganized thinking. You can't wipe us out. You cannot get rid of us. No matter what they do, we're still here. I always felt that way, that black people are like that little persistent mouse that you keep trying to kill. You try everything. You try traps, you try sprays, you try sonic booms, and there she is. Sitting on your counter at midnight, eating your leftover Thai food. Smiling. And she's got friends. Always surviving and sometimes thriving without sanctuary. As I close, I want to extend a reminder, a challenge, and an invitation to you. The reminder, on November 1st, 1850, The Liberator, the Boston anti-slavery newspaper, published by William Lord Garrison, a radical Unitarian white abolitionist, alerted local residents to the presence of what he called two prowling villains. It said in his paper that the two slave catchers had come to Boston from Macon, Georgia, with the aim of capturing William and Ellen Craft, a runaway enslaved couple. And he says, under the infernal Fugitive Slave Act, and carry them back to the hell of slavery. Prompted to action by the Crafts' plight, Boston's black community gathered a plan in their opposition to the fugitive slave law. They adopted a set of resolutions with the community and a pledge to resist opposition, resist oppression of any attack on their freedom, and many of their white brothers and sisters joined in. In the very first issue of his anti-slavery newspaper, William Lloyd Garrison wrote, and he stated, "I do not wish to think or speak or write with moderation. I am earnest, I will not equivocate, I will not excuse, I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard." And Garrison was heard. For more than 30 years, from the first issue of his weekly paper in 1831 until the end of the Civil War in 1865, when the last issue was published, Garrison spoke out eloquently and passionately against slavery and for the rights of America's black inhabitants to have sanctuary. Friends at First Universalist, be reminded that you can be an ally with your pen and your voice. Do not retreat, do not give up, be heard. Use your resources, use your access. Now, an invitation. Educate yourself. Read about the Black Joy Project. I know it's going to be at the top of Google because all of you are going to go home and Google it and enjoy it. Google Black Girl Magic. Read Audre Lorde and Sister Souljah. Listen to the speeches of black humanists on YouTube. Go and see the new movie, James Baldwin's book, If Beale Street Could Talk. Read slave narratives. Listen to gospel music. Listen to Beyonce's Lemonade. Get to know the stories of the black staff that work here, Timothy and Bobby and Richard. Ask them what they're listening to in the kitchen downstairs in the morning. Listen to Thelonious Monk and celebrate black survival and thriving with me. Finally, a challenge. A number of years ago, I was scheduled to preach at the Deerfield Unitarian Church in Illinois. The church was just a few miles outside north of Chicago, and I approached the turnoff. I made a slightly wrong turn and ended up backing out of somebody's private driveway and turning around, something I often do. 5 minutes later, on this quiet Sunday morning, I heard that sound. Whoop, 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 whoop. I know that sound. I've heard it before. I look up and I see the red and blue lights flashing. I pull over. I go into the posture. I turn off my hip-hop music, turn on the classical station. I make sure I can reach all my necessary documents in reach without moving anywhere this way or that way. I roll the window down just enough so I can slip the documents out. And in my most subservient, submissive slave voice, I say, "Good morning, officer. Did I do something wrong? I'm so sorry." I'm thinking only about one thing, even though I don't want to act like that. I'm thinking about one thing only. I got to make it to this church to preach, and I want to make it home to see my family. And the cop and I do that black driver, white officer dance that we all do, but it took him a long time. He was very concerned that I said that I'm going to that church to preach. I could see the church. I was in front of the church at the moment. It just sounded a little suspicious to him. What could I possibly have to say to all these people in Deerfield? After all, Michael Jordan lives down the street. And as I sat there right in front of the church, I could see one of my colleagues standing out in front of the church, looking dead at me and the cop. But he was just standing there. He was frozen. I'm looking at him, and my blood is starting to boil. But something kicks in, and he walks over to me after about 5 minutes, which was a long time when the police pull you over. It's a long time. It didn't take him that long to kill Philando Castile. It didn't take 5 minutes. He must have seen something in my eyes, getting real wise, if to say, "Get over here, man." Well, he did, and eventually, and then as soon as he walked over, the officer was, "Oh, no problem, no ticket." And I went in to preach. After the services, I asked my colleague, "What the hell was that about?" I was mad. I said, "You saw what was happening. Why didn't you come over," and this is a new expression I have, "why didn't you come over and wipe me out? Instead of help me out, wipe me Wipe me out of this situation. It's a real thing. Y'all can do it. He had no answer for me. And he said he needed to think about it, and he did. And then he moved away to San Diego, and I didn't talk to him for a long time. But then I got word from a mutual friend that he spoke about that story in a sermon. And he said, and this is sort of a little bit of what he said, he says, I let my colleague down. I looked at her the same way I looked at black men getting stopped by the police. I assumed they did something wrong. I looked at my colleague the same way. The what-ifs of that situation, that frightful day, play over and over in my mind, and since then I have made a commitment to show up, lean in, and walk towards people of color. First Universalist friends, sanctuary can be about a few seconds where you show up. Wipe somebody out sometime by standing at the curb, just watching what's happening. Let us know when ICE is coming. Write, think, and speak sanctuary into being. Thank you.